Hi, everyone, I'm Kira, and this is my story. Life before the pregnancy was simple and happy. Jack and I would spend evenings talking about our days, he'd share stories about his corporate challenges, and I'd tell him about the school kids' antics. But when I broke the news of the pregnancy, things took a turn I never anticipated. One evening, as Jack walked in, I was setting the table, battling waves of nausea but determined to keep things normal. "Hey, Jack, how was work today?" I asked, trying to sound cheerful. He barely looked up from his phone. "Same old, Kira. Deadlines and demands. What's for dinner?" I felt a pang of disappointment at his disinterest but brushed it aside. "I made your favorite, spaghetti. But, I need to tell you something important." Jack finally looked up, his brow raised. "What's up? You look pale. Don't tell me you're sick, we can't afford a doctor's bill right now." The concern in his voice was overshadowed by the hint of irritation. I hesitated but knew I couldn't keep it in any longer. "It's not that, Jack. I'm pregnant." For a moment, there was silence. The air felt heavy. Jack's face, usually so full of confidence, went blank. "Pregnant? Are you sure, Kira?" His voice was a mix of surprise and something else I couldn't quite place. "Yes, the tests confirmed it. We're going to have a baby, Jack." I tried to sound excited, hoping my enthusiasm would be contagious. Jack didn't respond. He just stared at the floor, lost in thought. The silence stretched between us, and I felt a cold dread settling in my stomach. This wasn't the reaction I'd hoped for. Finally, he looked up, his eyes hard. "Kira, you know my job's been on the line with all the cutbacks. And now this? How are we supposed to manage with a baby? Have you thought about that?" His words stung. I had imagined joy, hugs, maybe even happy tears. But instead, there was this, a cold, hard dose of reality served by the man I loved. "I know, Jack, it's unexpected. But it's also a blessing, isn't it? We can make it work. Maybe I can take some extra tutoring on the side, and..." Jack cut me off, his voice rising. "Extra tutoring? Kira, you're not thinking straight. A baby is not just about extra expenses for a few months. It's a lifelong commitment. And with your job, how are you going to manage?" I recoiled at his tone. This wasn't a discussion, it was a confrontation. My attempt to keep peace shattered like glass under the weight of his words. "Jack, please, let's just talk about this calmly. We can make a plan, figure out the finances." But he was already grabbing his coat, his face a mask of frustration and anger. "I need some air. We'll talk about this later, Kira. Or better yet, you figure it out. You're the one who's so happy about this blessing." And with that, he was gone, the door slamming shut behind him. I stood alone in our small kitchen, the untouched spaghetti cooling on the table, a symbol of our suddenly uncertain future. Weeks had passed since I broke the news to Jack, and each day felt like walking on thin ice. I was doing my best, trying to keep up with my teaching job despite the nausea that hit me without warning. But the day came when my body couldn't keep up, and I had to face the inevitable. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the unpaid leave form from the school in front of me, my hands trembling as I waited for Jack to come home. The clock ticked loudly in the quiet room, each second stretching into eternity. The door finally opened, and Jack walked in, his face buried in his phone. He barely glanced at me as he took off his coat. "Jack, we need to talk," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He sighed, a sound of tired irritation. "What is it now, Kira? I've had a day from hell at work. Can it wait?" I shook my head, feeling the weight of the moment. "It's about my job. I can't keep up, not with the baby and my health. I had to take unpaid leave." The words hung in the air, and I watched as Jack's expression turned from annoyance to disbelief, then to anger. "Unpaid leave? Are you out of your mind, Kira? How in the hell are we supposed to manage without your salary? Did you even think about that before making this brilliant decision?" His voice was rising, each word a sharp jab at my already fragile state. I tried to keep calm, to explain the situation. "Jack, please understand. I'm not doing this by choice. The doctor said it's crucial for the baby's health. I'm sick all the time, I can't stand up in front of a class without feeling like I'm going to pass out. What was I supposed to do? But my words seemed to fuel his anger even more. You always have an excuse, don't you, Kira? It's always something with you. First, you bring this surprise pregnancy on me, and now this? What's next? Are you going to tell me you can't even take care of the baby once it's here? His words stung like venom, and I felt tears pricking my eyes. This wasn't the Jack I knew, the man I had married. Jack, please, you're not being fair. I'm doing the best I can. It's not like I'm sitting around, enjoying this. Do you think I like being sick, feeling weak all the time? This is hard for me too, you know. There was a moment of silence as Jack paced the room, his hands clenched into fists, his breathing heavy. You know what, Kira? I'm done. I'm done dealing with this day in, day out. You figure out how to manage your situation, but don't expect me to stand around and watch our lives go down the drain because you can't handle it. I've got my own problems to deal with. The days following our confrontation felt like moving through a thick fog. Jack's presence in the house became like a shadow, barely speaking, his face a mask of cold indifference. I missed the sound of his laughter, the warmth of his touch, but all that seemed like a distant memory now, buried under the weight of our current reality. I was sprawled on the couch, a hand on my belly, trying to find some comfort in the little life growing inside me, when Jack walked in from work. His steps were heavy, the slamming of the door louder than usual. Jack, you're home early, I said, attempting to break the ice that had formed between us. He grunted in response, tossing his keys on the table with a clatter. Yeah, well, not like there's anything better to do. Can't exactly go out with the guys knowing I've got a whole circus to deal with at home. His words were like daggers, and I felt my heart sink. Jack, I don't know what to say anymore. I'm trying here, really trying. But it's like nothing I do is right in your eyes. He let out a dry laugh, void of any humor. Right? Kira, let's not kid ourselves. You lying around all day while I bust my ass at work, that's not trying. That's you taking a vacation at my expense. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't the man I married. Vacation? You think this is a vacation for me? Being sick all the time, feeling like I'm a burden to you? This is a nightmare, Jack. I wish you could understand. Jack poured himself a drink, his back turned to me. Understand? Oh, I understand all right. I understand that I'm supposed to be the provider, the protector. But what's the point when the person you're supposed to be protecting doesn't even try to help herself? I tried to sit up, fighting the dizziness that came with the movement. Help myself? How, Jack? Tell me, because I'd love to know. I'm carrying our child, dealing with this sickness every day. What more do you want from me? He downed his drink in one go, the glass hitting the table with a thud. I want a partner, Kira. Someone who stands by me, not someone who adds to the load. But you wouldn't understand that, would you? It's always about you and your problems. Tears blurred my vision, the words choking in my throat. Jack, I'm your wife. Your partner. But it feels like I'm nothing to you now. I'm scared, Jack. Scared of what's happening to us, scared of facing this alone. For a moment, there was silence, the kind that screams louder than words. Then Jack stood up, his figure looming over me. Scared? You're not the only one, Kira. But unlike you, I don't have the luxury of breaking down. I've got to keep it together, for both of us. Because if I don't, who will? The day we had the appointment with Dr. Harris felt like walking into a storm. I knew how important it was for Jack to understand what I was going through, but his reluctance hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. As we sat in Dr. Harris's office, the doctor's gaze was kind but serious. I've asked you both here because it's crucial to understand the reality of Kira's condition. Nausea during pregnancy can be debilitating, and it's not uncommon for it to last throughout the pregnancy. Jack shifted uncomfortably in his chair, a skeptical smile on his face. Come on, Doc. Are you telling me this nausea thing is real? I mean, people go to work sick all the time. Kira's just taking it easy, right? Dr. Harris's expression didn't change. Jack, this isn't about taking it easy. Pregnancy can significantly impact a woman's body. It's not something one can simply shrug off. Kira's not pretending. This is a serious medical condition that requires support and understanding, especially from her partner. I could feel Jack's impatience growing, his disbelief a tangible force in the room. Seriously, Doc? So, what, I'm supposed to believe that she can't do a thing because of a little morning sickness? I work hard every day. It's not like I can just call in sick whenever I feel like it. Dr. Harris leaned forward, his voice firm. Jack, this isn't a little morning sickness. This is a condition that is affecting Kira's health and well-being. It's not a matter of toughness or endurance. It's a medical reality, and belittling it won't change the facts. I watched as Jack's smirk faded, replaced by a stubborn set to his jaw. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is ridiculous. I don't have time for this. Kira, you're a grown woman. Stop acting like you're the only one who's ever been pregnant. Dr. Harris tried to interject, but Jack was already at the door. I'm sorry, Doc, but I'm not buying it. She's just avoiding work and chores, and now you're telling me to pamper her? That's not happening. And with that, Jack walked out, leaving a heavy silence in his wake. Dr. Harris looked at me, his eyes filled with concern. Kira, I'm sorry. But please know, you're not alone in this. We'll find a way to manage your symptoms and get you the support you need. I nodded, the lump in my throat making it hard to speak. The doctor's office, once a place of reassurance, now felt like the eye of the storm, with the hardest part still to come. The day of the corporate party loomed over us like a dark cloud. I felt a knot in my stomach, knowing that being around so many people, with their perfumes and the food, would be a challenge with my condition. But Jack was insistent. Kira, you have to pull yourself together for this. It's important for my job, for our future, Jack said as he adjusted his tie in front of the mirror. I was sitting on the bed, feeling weak and anxious. Jack, I really don't think I can handle it. The nausea, the smells, it's too much. Can't you go alone this time? Jack turned to me, his expression hard and unyielding. No, Kira. I won't go alone. You need to get over this nonsense and come with me. Everyone's bringing their spouses. What will they think if I show up without you? I tried to reason with him, my voice shaky. It's not nonsense, Jack. You know how bad it's been. I can't control when it hits. What if I get sick at the party? I don't want to embarrass you in front of your colleagues. He let out a harsh laugh, devoid of any real amusement. Embarrass me? Kira, you're already doing that by not going. You think people don't talk? They see you barely leave the house, hear about you not working. Now you want to add to the gossip by making me go to this party alone. The accusation stung, and I felt tears welling up in my eyes. That's not fair, Jack. I'm struggling every day. This isn't about gossip, it's about my health, our baby's health. Jack's face softened for a moment, but the hardness quickly returned. Your health? What about my health, Kira? My career? You think I don't have enough on my plate? Now suck it up, get dressed, and let's go. We're already late. Feeling defeated and scared, I slowly got up and started getting ready. The drive to the party was silent, the tension between us thick enough to cut through. As we walked into the building, the noise and the smells hit me like a wave. My stomach churned, and I felt the color drain from my face. Jack was busy greeting his colleagues, a forced smile plastered on his face. Jack, I really don't feel good, I whispered, clutching his arm. He looked at me, annoyance flashing in his eyes. Not now, Kira. Just try to get through the evening. It's important for me. But it was too much. The room started spinning, and I knew I was going to be sick. I tugged at Jack's sleeve, desperation in my voice. Jack, I need to get out of here. Please. That's when it happened. Jack's grip on my arm tightened, and he pulled me away from the crowd, hissing in my ear. You just can't help yourself, can you? Always making a scene. Just go, then. Get out of here if you're going to be like this. He dragged me out into the corridor, his grip bruising my arm. I could barely stand, the nausea overwhelming me. Jack, please, I can't. But he was relentless. With a rough shove, he pushed me towards the exit. Walk home, Kira. And don't you dare come back until you've learned not to embarrass me like this. Leaning against the cool wall of the hallway, I struggled to catch my breath, the taste of humiliation and nausea bitter in my mouth. The bright lights of the party seemed a world away, and in that moment, I felt utterly alone. But then, the sound of approaching footsteps broke through my daze. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The voice was deep, tinged with genuine concern. I looked up to see an elderly man standing before me, his eyes searching my face for an answer. I tried to muster a response, my words tangled with sobs. I'm not okay. My husband, he just doesn't understand." The man's expression turned stern, yet his voice remained gentle. "What's your husband's name, if you don't mind me asking?" Between shaky breaths, I managed to utter, Jack Harrison." A flicker of recognition crossed the man's face, but he quickly masked it with a nod. "I see. And why, may I ask, did he leave you out here all alone?" The concern in his voice was a balm to my frayed nerves. I found myself confiding in this stranger, telling him about the pregnancy, the nausea, and how Jack had dismissed my struggles and pushed me away. The man listened intently, his jaw tightening with every word I spoke. "That's no way for a man to treat his wife, especially in your condition. Jack ought to be ashamed. What kind of partner turns his back on his family when they need him most?" His words, spoken with such conviction, stirred something within me, a flicker of hope, a sense of validation I hadn't felt in a long time. I don't know what to do anymore. I feel so lost, I admitted, the weight of my situation pressing down on me. The man placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, his gaze steady and reassuring. "You're not alone. Not anymore. Come, let's find you a place to sit down and get some water. You need to take care of yourself, for your sake and your baby's." As we walked to a quieter area, I couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude for this kind stranger's kindness. We found a secluded table, and he brought over a glass of water, urging me to take small sips. The man then took a seat across from me, his demeanor shifting from compassionate to resolute. "I'm going to have a word with Jack. It's high time someone set him straight. No one should treat their partner the way he's treated you tonight." Before I could protest, the man was on his feet, his figure exuding an authority that made me realize he was someone of significance. But more than that, he was someone who saw my pain and chose to stand by me when I felt most vulnerable. It wasn't long before the calm was shattered by a commotion coming from the main hall. Curiosity got the better of me, and I edged closer to see what was happening. There, in the center of the room, stood the elderly man, now commanding the attention of everyone. Beside him was Jack, looking like he wished the ground would swallow him whole. I could barely hear over the murmur of the crowd, but the stern voice of the older man cut through the noise. "Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you not just as the director of this company but as someone who believes in the core values we all hold dear. It has come to my attention that one of our own has grossly failed to uphold these values in his personal life." The room fell silent, every eye locked on the scene unfolding. Jack's face had turned an ashen color, his usual confidence nowhere to be seen. The director continued, his gaze unwavering. "Jack Harrison, you have not only let down this company but also the very family you vowed to protect and respect. Mocking your pregnant wife, leaving her in distress, is behavior that I cannot, and will not, tolerate under any circumstances." I could feel the eyes in the room shifting between Jack and the director, whispers and murmurs filling the space with a mixture of shock and disbelief. Jack finally found his voice, though it was nothing more than a weak stammer. "Sir, you don't understand. Kira, she's just overreacting. She's making it all up. It's not like it sounds." The director's eyes narrowed, his disappointment clear. "Overreacting? Jack, you were seen manhandling your wife, dismissing her health concerns, and leaving her alone and unwell. Is that the kind of man you are? Is that the example you set?" Jack seemed to shrink with every word, his usual bravado fading into nothingness. The crowd was watching, some with open disapproval, others with whispered conversations behind their hands. "Sir, please, I didn't mean for it to. I was just stressed, that's all," Jack pleaded, his voice barely audible. The director shook his head, his decision made. "Stress is no excuse for your behavior, Jack. Effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties at this company. I will not have someone who exhibits such disregard for their family representing us in any capacity." The finality in the director's voice left no room for argument. Jack stood there, defeated and alone, as the director turned his attention to the crowd. Let this be a reminder to all of us. Our actions, both in our professional and personal lives, reflect on who we are. Let's strive to be better, to support and respect those around us. As the director stepped down, the room erupted into a low buzz of conversations. Jack made a hasty exit, his fall from grace complete. The days following the party felt surreal, like I was living in a dream, or perhaps finally waking up from a nightmare. The silence in the house was no longer suffocating, it was peaceful, a space for me to breathe and gather my thoughts. Sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, I watched the early morning sun paint the room with a gentle light. It was then that the doorbell rang, a sound that once would have sent a jolt of anxiety through me. But not today. Today, I felt a strange sense of calm. I opened the door to find Jack's director standing there, his face somber yet kind. "Kira, may I come in?" I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. "Of course, please." As we sat at the table, the director folded his hands, his gaze meeting mine. "I wanted to check on you, after everything that happened. And to talk about what comes next." I took a deep breath, the weight of his words settling in my heart. "Thank you. It's been a lot to process. But I feel like it's time to move forward, to make some changes." The director nodded, a look of understanding in his eyes. "That's a good mindset to have. And you won't be alone in this. The company has a support system for situations like these. We can offer counseling, legal advice if you need it, and financial support, especially with the baby on the way." The kindness in his offer brought tears to my eyes. I don't know what to say. "Thank you. This means so much to me." He offered a gentle smile. "It's the least we can do. No one should go through what you've been through alone. And as for Jack, he's been given the resources to seek help too. It's up to him to decide what to do with them." I nodded, a sense of closure washing over me. Jack's path was his to choose, but mine was clear now. It was time to rebuild, to create a new life for myself and my baby. The director stood, placing a business card on the table. "If you need anything at all, you call this number. We're here for you, Kira." After he left, I looked around the quiet house, the walls echoing with the promise of a new beginning. I picked up the business card, running my fingers over the embossed letters. It was more than just a piece of paper, it was a lifeline, a symbol of hope. I took a sip of my tea, the warmth spreading through me. With the support of people who cared and the strength I had found within myself, I knew I could create a brighter future, a new dawn not just for me, but for the little life growing inside me. And as I watched the sun climb higher into the sky, I realized that this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning.